Welcome back to the Bruins Insider Podcast. Today I'm joined by Max Dorsey. Today we're going to talk about UCLA football, kind of what this team is going to look like this season with the transfer portal and kind of the recruiting this offseason so far. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who's here listening. It means a lot to both me and Max, I'm sure. But yeah, without further ado, let's kind of get right into it. So right now I'm going to give Max an opportunity to kind of introduce himself, kind of what he does here at SI, that kind of thing. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Max Dorsey. I'm the recruiting beat writer here at SI. I'll be on Andrew's show, I believe every Thursday this will air. And yeah, just excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So like I said, we're going to kind of talk about some like football. I kind of want to, pick your brain kind of when it comes to that thing, like what you see. Because I know you cover a few different teams. I know you do stuff for UCLA sometimes. I think Arizona State, just to kind of name some. So kind of right off the bat, how do you think UCLA's recruiting class kind of stacks up, or recruiting transfer portal? Like, how's their offseason been kind of overall compared to some of these other teams that you've kind of been covering?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting situation in Westwood because you have a new coaching staff entirely for the most part. So we see it now in today's era of college football more than ever. But when a new coaching staff comes in, you're seeing so many players depart. So while UCLA brought in 41 transfers and it was a great class, they also had 24 guys leave. So it's a lot of rebuilding. That's kind of what Chesney was tasked with. Obviously, he had the benefit of coming from James Madison and being able to bring a lot of those JMU guys with him. But it was really like a rebuild mindset heading into the offseason.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's like something that UCLA, I feel, has an edge on, right? Because, Chesney, he kind of went in after Signetti, kind of pulled everyone to Indiana. So he kind of has that, he knows how to rebuild teams. And I think with more resources at UCLA, I think it can only be a good thing. So yeah, I think that's going to be good for UCLA. I think we're in a good spot overall. Obviously, we can get better. There's a lot of places where I do think UCLA could kind of improve on. But that kind of leads us on to our next topic. What are some places that UCLA could be doing better, in the transfer portal or, recruiting wise? Like, what are some holes you think need to get filled?
Yeah, again, with so many players departing and so many new faces, this year as a whole, I think Bruins fans need to go in with semi-low expectations. It's going to take a while for these players to gel. Again, with Chesney coming from James Madison, there's going to be a lot of familiar faces for him. And I think he tried his best to address all the needs that he could, especially, at wide receiver. They brought in a lot of players in the secondary, which was a massive need for them. They brought in a lot of players, but there are going to be holes on the team. And again, it's going to take some time once they are on the field to really gel. You saw it at North Carolina last year. That's the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick, coming in. And it really took those players a lot of time to kind of get used to each other, to get used to the new system. So I think there is going to be kind of an adjustment period here. And there obviously are some position needs, like the offensive line, I think still needs a little work. The secondary is not perfect. Yes, they brought in some players, but that's definitely an area they need to address in the future, especially in the 2027 cycle. And then we both know how bad the running game was last year. Obviously, Wayne Knight is a massive addition, but are they going to be able to run the ball effectively on first and second down? I think that's going to be a major question for them in 2026 as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I kind of set the expectations a little bit higher, I will admit. I just think the schedule this season is kind of in UCLA's favor. I think, Oregon, I think Michigan and USC are like the only ranked teams coming in, but you never know. But like you said, you make a lot of good points there. It takes some time to kind of gel with everything going on. But kind of just like on the topic of the transfer portal, was there one player who UCLA got, either offense or defense, who really caught your eye, who you think is going to make the biggest impact in 2026?
Yeah, I'll give you an offensive and a defensive player. My offensive guy is a player I just mentioned. It's Wayne Knight, the running back. Again, I just spoke on it, but the running game was really bad for the Bruins last year. It's something I think Nico was their leading rusher. Yeah. So obviously that's something that needs to change in order to just have a successful offense in general. Knight ran for over 1,300 yards last season and averaged over 6.5 yards per carry. So that's an explosive running game that helps you set up your offense for success on second down and on third down. Obviously, this is a guy that's like 5'8", 5'9", a little undersized. Is he going to be able to play in the Big Ten? I think that is kind of a question mark, but he has the athleticism and speed to certainly compete at that level. So if Knight can do what UCLA and I think Chesney expects him to do in the running game, I think he will be the single most impactful transfer that the Bruins brought in. And also maybe even in the Big Ten in the way that he could potentially transform this offense. And then defensively, there's a couple guys. I have a Oklahoma linebacker transfer, Sammy Omosigo, obviously was their top-rated transfer, terrific player, was the leader of the Sooners defense last year at Oklahoma. I think he's going to come in and immediately make a big impact for UCLA, especially with all the linebacker depth that they lost this offseason. And then Sahir West, the edge rusher from James Madison, he's a terrific player. I don't really have any concerns about his game translating. I think he's going to kind of slide in and start immediately for them. He had over, I believe, 7 sacks last season and 14 tackles for loss. So that's another guy I'm very excited about that they brought in.
Yeah, no, I think those are two big players. I'm not sure if you know this, but if you took Nico Amaliava's rushing yards from UCLA's total, they would have been like ranked 12th or something as an individual compared to some of these guys, with Wayne Knight being ahead of them. So again, Wayne Knight, huge transfer. I totally agree. The Sammy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but yeah, great player. I think that's going to give us some depth that we desperately need, and he's going to be a starter. But yeah, I'll kind of give like a brief overview of who I think is going to be good. Starting off, I think Leland Smith, San Jose State. I think he's going to be a really good player for UCLA. And that's going to be kind of a culmination of a lot of things going well for UCLA. Because, I mean, starting off with, if you just look at Leland Smith, 6'4", 215, he wasn't the best receiver for San Jose State, but still, he has the physicals to do well. He has like track-like speed. I think he was clocked at like 4.3. I don't know how official that is, but 6'4", 4'3". We're getting to like Megatron status kind of when that goes in. So if Dean Kennedy can like shape him, I think what Smith will offer for the offense is going to kind of change everything, right? I know we got Aiden Menzel, players like that, Landon Ellis. Those two players are going to be good, but I think Leland Smith can be a real field stretcher for UCLA. But yeah, I think he's also going to, like I said, deep threat. That's going to be big in this one. I think if the play action can develop, especially if we have a Wayne Knight kind of doing good, Nico wants to throw that long ball, in my opinion, right? I think we saw that last year with, Quasi Gilmer, Titus. So those two players, I mean, they were good, kind of, but still, I think this new group is going to kind of elevate that. On the defensive side, I have Malik Hartford, safety from Ohio State, 6'2", 200. So he's going to be that kind of bigger guy there in that secondary. And, he's had experience playing behind Caleb Downs. And honestly, that can't be a bad thing whatsoever. And like you said, secondary still needs some work, but I think it's kind of moving in the right direction, with Malik Hartford. So yeah, moving on, kind of wrapping up the transfer portal. I don't know if you wanted to say anything, like any closing comments on the transfer portal or not, but
I will say what you said about Leland Smith and the wide receiver unit as a whole. I think that was a really important step that Chesney took this offseason. I think that was probably priority number one, because you saw a lot of those wide receivers come in and commit early in the portal. And when you have a quarterback like Nico, who's obviously very talented, we saw what he could do at Tennessee, and I thought he played, pretty well, all things considered, for UCLA last season. Obviously, wasn't the best situation. I think they really went out and they invested into the offense and into Nico, and I think that's going to set them up for success. Again, there is some adjustment concerns, especially with 4 new faces at wide receiver. If you throw in South Carolina's Brian Rowe in there as well. But I really do think that's going to be the most impactful group as a whole for UCLA through the portal.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We needed to take that extra step, and I think Chesney kind of did that. Investing in Amaliava is something that wasn't going to be a huge factor moving forward. But yeah, moving on, I kind of want to talk about recruiting, and I'm not the most versed on recruiting, but I kind of want to know what you see from this UCLA recruiting. What do you think Chesney's going to be aggressive towards? Already some big names that they've kind of landed already.
Yeah, so the 2026 cycle is for the most part over. Early National Signing Day was in December. Unfortunately, they weren't able to keep a lot of their commits. I believe 4 4-stars ended up flipping during the signing period. They lost a lot of players when Foster was first fired. So there's just it's just not obviously an ideal situation. It's not the best class that they could bring in. But the 2027 cycle is starting to heat up. It's going to be Chesney's first full cycle as UCLA's head coach. And we've already seen him really lean into this West Coast recruiting path. So obviously he's an East Coast guy, hasn't really had much experience recruiting the West Coast, but we've seen him send numerous coaches already to local high schools, starting to build those relationships with both those coaching staffs and players as well. He himself has gone on the road and spoken with some coaching staffs and players. So I really think the priority for them is to be able to eventually compete with a USC in California, be able to bring in the top talent in their own backyard, because just in general, when talking about recruiting, there's so much talent. It's the most talented state in the country, California is. So if you can recruit your own backyard at a high level, that's already a fantastic start. I believe that's going to be UCLA's goal under Chesney. And then from there, they'll kind of branch out and target other players as well.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's an untapped market that I feel like UCLA, or it is tapped by other teams, but I think UCLA could do a better job at kind of getting those recruits. And, there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. But I think in Chesney and definitely investing more into that is going to be huge for the Bruins, without a doubt. But who are some players that you wish UCLA would have hit on kind of in the 2026 signing period? Anthony Jones, the Pula twins, players kind of like that you wish UCLA was able to kind of snag.
Yeah, off the top of my head, Anthony Jones was obviously, I don't think he's committed elsewhere yet. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I know he decommitted and he'll probably sign with UCLA. I think that's still a possibility, or another school by the time signing period rolls around in February, the actual signing period, not the early signing period. There's a couple of safety commits. Again, we talked about the need of secondary that ended up flipping. I believe one went to Texas. I'm blanking on his name right now. And another went to Washington. So there were a couple of players that flipped that were, big pieces to UCLA's class. Like Carter Gooden is another one, the edge rusher who ultimately flipped to Tennessee. There's just a lot of, and this happens. There was really no stopping it when you have a coaching change like that. Players, especially high school players, obviously commit for a coaching staff. That's one of their top reasons all the time. So they're coming into the program. They have built a rapport with the coaching staff. They want to go play for that coaching staff. And then when that staff leaves, obviously there's a lot of question marks about the program. So it was never going to be a good cycle for UCLA. I thought the recruiting staff in place at the time, like Marshawn Freeloy, the director of recruiting, who's still with the program, and the former general manager, Kari Darlington, did as good of a job as they possibly could have, kind of retaining the talent that they had. And they even flipped some guys down the line. But again, it was just never going to be the perfect cycle for UCLA. And that's why I think Chesney and his staff they focused on the transfer portal to round out the 2026 cycle. And now they're going, full steam ahead towards the 2027 cycle.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It was tough for UCLA. It was not the season that they kind of wanted. I think getting rid of Foster was kind of needed, but still there's a lot of things that UCLA needed kind of going into this recruiting class that were just not possible at the time. But yeah, I think as I was writing an article, there was just decommits happening every second. And it was like, oh gosh, what's going on here? But yeah, I really like what you said. I think Carter Gooden, Anthony Jones, those were two big guys that UCLA really needed. Their defensive line this season or last season, whatever, was not that good. I think they had 14-ish sacks combined. Obviously, you have Zahir West, so kind of what you were saying, how we kind of rounded it out in the transfer portal. And yeah, I think overall, I think 2027 is going to be a big year for UCLA in that kind of way. But I think for me personally, I think the biggest miss that I saw, you can disagree, whatever. I thought Torrey Davis was kind of one of those players who I thought could be really good for UCLA. I think he's listed as an athlete or whatever. So he's that multi-positional guy who would have been nice to see in the Dean Kennedy offense. So that kind of thing. So we're kind of getting towards the end of it. So I kind of want to give I want to understand what your expectations are for UCLA record wise. They kind of have a soft conference schedule this season. I think they have Cal, Nevada in their early part of their schedule for non-conference. But what do you think a realistic expectation for UCLA this season? I know you mentioned kind of it might be hard to mesh at first, but I kind of want to hear what you think about what UCLA can do this year.
Yeah, I genuinely wasn't trying to kind of be a downer about the program. I do think there is going to be some time where they are going to have to kind of build what Chesney wants to build. I don't think it's going to happen in year one. It will probably happen, in year 3 or year 4. Because I do want to say that I think Chesney is fully capable of rebuilding this program and bringing it back to its glory days and making UCLA a consistent Big Ten contender. I do want to say that. But I do think, not everyone's Kurt Cignetti. Not everyone's going to come in and, go from being the losingest program in college football history to going 16-0, 17-0, and winning the national title. That's just not going to happen. So I think expectations should be tapered for UCLA fans, but I do think they're going to make a bowl. I would say, 7-5 or 8-4 is very realistic. There's talent all over the roster. And I think I mentioned this at the start of the show, but the one thing that benefits Chesney and that adjustment period is the fact that so many of these guys coming in are JMU guys. So they know the system, they know Kennedy, they know Chesney. And I think that's going to definitely make it easier. Obviously the locker room has to gel. That's very important. But I think it's a new era of UCLA football. I think fans should overall be excited. This is going to be a fun time to be a UCLA fan. And I think they got a taste of that in the portal. Like you saw how many players they were bringing in. There's some very, very fun players coming in. But yeah, I think it's going to be a positive season, but I don't think they're going to be, ranked or competing for a playoff spot by any means.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, like I said, I think I mentioned earlier too, that I feel like they could make a deep run if they wanted to. But again, that's entirely contingent on how well everyone meshes with. But I think what they have kind of on paper right now, Colin Hitchler at defensive coordinator, I think he spent some time in Alabama. And he has that Power 4 experience that, Chesney does not really have moving in. And I think Dean Kennedy was also good. I think they were top 10 in scoring offense. But like I said, there are going to be hiccups in the road. But for me, I think UCLA, like you said, that 8-4, 7-5 kind of mark, maybe if they're lucky, 9-3, if they could kind of beat the easy teams and then just lose to, like I said, Oregon, Michigan, USC. Those are 3 big ones. But yeah, overall, I think the Bruins will probably have a good season. I hope they do, because I don't know how long Nico is going to kind of stick around. And there are some questions at quarterback after him. I know we got a few players, his brother's kind of in that depth chart too. But I think we can't really waste Nico's time here. Because he, like you said, I mean, he's a great player. We saw that in Tennessee. But yeah, I agree with you totally. I think the expectations need to be pulled back a little bit. A bowl game, I feel like that's kind of the floor for UCLA, that 6-6 record kind of thing. But yeah, I think overall it's going to be a really good season for the Bruins. And yeah, that's all I had. If there's anything else you kind of want to add on to kind of close out, floor is yours.
No, man, that's it for me. Thank you for having me today, Andrew.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to have you back on next week. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So thank you so much, Max. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.